Hey guys, tonight we are heading back in time, to a place of shimmering silks, exotic spices, and legendary desert journeys. Imagine, for a moment, that you are a merchant, your caravan a tiny speck moving across the vast, silent expanse of the Asian continent. The sun beats down, the stars wheel overhead, and fortunes are waiting to be made at the end of the road. Now, let's be perfectly clear, based on the complete lack of basic sanitation, antibiotics, or even a decent travel pillow, you probably wouldn't survive the first week. The romance of the Silk Road was mostly invented by people who never had to actually travel it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet, no-pressure situation, just like tonight's story. Feel free to post your location and what time it is where you are. It's always nice to see where everyone is drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The darkness is not a comfort. It's a tool. It's the cold, heavy blanket you are born from each day, long before the sun has even thought about beginning its ascent over the distant, jagged peaks. A shuffling sound nearby tells you that you are not the first to rise. You never are. Somewhere in the sprawling, makeshift camp of tents and animal pens, another soul is already facing the morning's realities. You can smell them, the sharp, musky scent of camel, the faint aroma of yesterday's dung fire, the dusty wool of your own blankets. You sit up slowly, your joints complaining in a language only you understand. This is the moment, the quiet hinge upon which the entire day swings, where the first of many mundane worries begins to unspool in your mind. It has nothing to do with bandits or sandstorms. It's about the pack. Your life is in these bundles. Not your whole life, of course. That's a wife and 2 children and a small house with a stubborn apricot tree back in Samarkand. But this part of your life, the part that pays for the other part, is sitting right there in the gloom. For large, tightly bound bales wrapped in rough burlap and leather. Your treasure. Your burden. Getting to your feet, you pull your thick woolen robe tighter. The air has a bite that promises another day of relentless sun followed by a night of bitter cold. You don't think about that. You can only think about one thing at a time. The pack. You approach the first of your 2 camels. He is a Bactrian, a magnificent, 2-humped beast of burden, and currently, he is sleeping with a look of profound indifference that you find vaguely insulting. You and this camel have an understanding, which is to say, he carries your things, and you do everything in your power not to annoy him. This is a mainstream historical fact. By the way, the 2-humped Bactrian camel was the SUV of the Eastern Silk Road, perfectly adapted to the terrain and capable of carrying immense weight. What they don't tell you in the history books is how much they complain. Not with words, but with groans, with passive-aggressive chewing, with a single, slow blink that seems to question all of your life choices. You give him a gentle pat between his humps. He responds with a low, guttural grumble from deep in his throat. It's his version of a good morning. Now the work begins. The first and most critical worry is balance. It is an art form born of pure necessity. If you load one side of the camel even slightly heavier than the other, you are in for a day of misery. The load will shift, the saddle will rub, and the camel will develop sores. A sore camel is a slow camel. A slow camel gets left behind. So you approach the task with the focus of a jeweler cutting a gem. You run your hands over the first bale. Silk. Bolts of it, the lifeblood of this trade. It feels dense, heavy, and impossibly smooth even through the coarse wrappings. You and your partner lift it, one on each side. The strain shoots up your back. You grunt and hoist it up to the wooden frame of the pack saddle. It settles into place with a dull thud. Now the other side. This bale is slightly different. More silk, but also a few smaller, harder packages hidden within, glass beads from the west, a little spice. Is it the same weight? You press down on both sides, rocking them slightly, trying to feel the difference in the resistance. It feels close. Close isn't good enough. You can already picture the slight list to the left, the chafing, the camel's accusatory stare at the midday stop. You'd rather face a small band of highwaymen than an unhappy camel. At least the highwaymen are direct about what they want. You add a small coil of rope to the lighter side. Better. Historians still argue whether merchants like you saw themselves as part of a grand Silk Road network, connecting empires and cultures, or simply as men plying a familiar, dangerous route from one specific city to the next. Standing here in the freezing dark, debating the precise weight distribution of your cargo, the grand narrative feels very far away. You're just a man trying to get his stuff to the next town in one piece. You even engage in a quiet, personal ritual, a fringe tidbit of life that no official record will ever capture. You slip a small, smooth river stone, one you've carried for years, into a fold of the leather straps on the right side. Not for luck against dragons or demons, but for luck against an unbalanced load. It's a superstition born of pure pragmatism. Finally, the 4 main bales are secured. Your arms ache. You methodically check every strap, every knot, pulling on them with your full body weight. A loose knot can be a catastrophe. Not a dramatic, cinematic catastrophe, but a slow, deeply annoying one where a bale gradually slips over 3 hours, forcing the entire caravan to halt while you, the center of everyone's impatient glare, have to unload and start all over again. The shame is worse than the work. You finish the last knot and step back, breathing a little easier. The camel lets out another grumble, this one sounding suspiciously like a sigh of resignation. He knows the day is about to begin. You look over your work. It looks solid. It looks balanced. For now, the first worry of the day is quieted, tucked away like the little river stone in the strap. It will be back, of course. But for now, there is only the cold, the dark, and the faint promise of dawn. The caravan lurches into motion as a single, sprawling organism. The sun is finally here, casting long, distorted shadows that stretch out before you, pointing the way west. There is a rhythm to the first hour of the day. It's a symphony of creaking leather, the soft, rhythmic thud of hundreds of padded feet on the hard-packed earth, and the low hum of conversation as merchants shake the last of the cold from their bones. Your own worries about the packing, the knots, and the balance you so carefully calibrated, have settled. The load on your 2 camels, Rustam and his smaller companion, Sariah, seems secure. For a moment, you allow yourself to feel a sliver of peace. The day has begun, you are moving, and all is well. But peace is a luxury you can't afford for long. Your eyes, trained by years of this life, are not on the horizon. They are fixed on the front left foot of your lead camel, Rustam. There it is. A hesitation. A tiny, almost imperceptible hitch in his smooth, rolling gait. He places the foot down just a little more gently than the other 3. It's nothing. It's probably just the uneven ground. It's probably in your head. But the seed of a new worry has been planted, and in the fertile soil of a merchant's mind, it grows with astonishing speed. This, right here, is your primary concern. It is not the thought of shadowy figures appearing over the next dune, nor the fear of the great sandstorms that can blot out the sky. It is the mundane, tedious, and potentially ruinous reality of a sore foot. Your entire enterprise, the silks you so carefully packed, the profits you've already calculated in your head, the promise you made to your wife for a new necklace, is walking on that foot. You watch him, your focus absolute. Every fourth step. A tiny flinch. You try to remember yesterday. Was he doing it then? You were so tired when you made camp, so focused on getting your tent up and a small fire going, that you might have missed it. A wave of self-recrimination washes over you. A good merchant knows his animals. He knows their moods, their habits, their every grunt and groan. You've been careless. As you trudge alongside him, the sun beginning to climb, you can't help but think about the incredible biological machine you are walking next to. It's a common misconception that a camel's humps are filled with water. It's a mainstream fact, even if it feels like a secret, that they are massive deposits of fat. This fat is a portable power station. The camel's body metabolizes it for energy when food is scarce, and the process also releases water, a neat trick of biological engineering that allows it to travel for days in arid conditions. But all the brilliant biology in the world doesn't matter if the machine gets a stone in its works. You wish you could just ask him what's wrong, but his communication is limited to those judgmental stares and the occasional, deeply offended-sounding snort. It's a one-way conversation, and you're doing all the worrying. Academics and historians debate whether the high cost of a prime Bactrian camel meant that merchants like you were owner-operators, or if you were more like long-haul contractors, leasing your animals from a wealthy investor back in the city. To you, the distinction is meaningless. Whether you own Rustum outright or are simply responsible for him, his well-being is your well-being. His problem is your problem. And right now, he is limping, and you can feel the phantom weight of your investor's displeasure, or the even heavier weight of a direct financial loss settling on your shoulders. You almost wish for a real problem, like a broken strap, something you could fix with your hands. This is worse. This is a mystery. When the caravan leader finally calls the halt for the midday rest, you feel a surge of relief. You guide Rustum away from the main group, earning a questioning glance from the caravan master, which you pointedly ignore. You kneel in the dust beside the great beast, murmuring soothingly as you reach for his foot. He allows it, his large, soft eyes watching you with an unnerving stillness. The foot is huge, a leathery pad designed to spread his weight across shifting sands. You run your fingers over the tough surface, probing gently. And then you find it. Tucked deep into a crease, almost invisible, is a small, sharp-edged piece of shale. Your relief is so profound it almost makes you dizzy. It's not a strain. It's not a disease. It's just a rock. You pull out your small utility knife and carefully, painstakingly, work the stone free. Rustum lets out a soft huff as it comes loose, a sound that says, "Took you long enough." The spot is tender and slightly inflamed. Now for the remedy. This is the sort of fringe knowledge that keeps commerce alive, a tidbit of veterinary science passed down through generations of whispers at campfires. You take a small handful of bitter herbs from your personal pouch, pop them into your mouth, and chew them into a thick, green paste. It tastes awful, but that's how you know it works. You spit the poultice onto the tender spot on Rustum's foot, spreading it with your finger. To hold it in place, you tear a strip from one of your spare cloths, a small but not insignificant sacrifice, and wrap it carefully around his foot, tying it off. The entire time, you apologize. "My fault, old friend. I should have checked the ground at our last stop." He responds by trying to eat your sleeve, his affection as subtle as ever. As you give him a precious handful of dried apricots from your own supply, you know the worry isn't truly gone. It has just changed shape. Now you'll worry if the poultice is working, if the cut will get infected, if he'll favor the foot and throw off the balance of the load you so carefully arranged in the cold darkness of the morning. The journey continues. So does the worrying. The break is over. You know this not because of a bell or a horn, but because of a shift in the air, a collective gathering of energy that ripples through the resting caravan. And you know it because of Alton, the caravan master. He doesn't shout. He simply stands up, and this simple act carries more authority than a king's decree. As you finish securing the fresh, herb-scented bandage on Rustum's foot, the callback to your earlier anxiety, you feel his eyes on you. It's not an angry look. It's worse. It's a look of appraisal, of calculation. It's the look of a man weighing your worth against the trouble you might cause, and you suddenly feel like a questionable piece of merchandise. The new worry of the afternoon has arrived, and it has a name, Alton. He is the undisputed ruler of this dusty, mobile kingdom of 50 men and 200 camels. This is a well-established historical fact. The Karvan Bashi, or caravan master, was the linchpin of any successful Silk Road expedition. He was a combination of navigator, diplomat, general, and judge. His word was law. He chose the route, he timed the stops, he negotiated with local chieftains for safe passage, and he settled disputes with an air of finality that no one dared to question. His experience was the invisible shield that protected every merchant here from the 1,000 dangers of the road. And you, with your limping camel, have just put a tiny dent in that shield. You've introduced an unplanned variable, and Alton does not like variables. He's a Sogdian, like you, but from a harder part of the country. His face is a roadmap of past journeys, the skin weathered to the texture of old leather, his eyes narrowed from a lifetime of staring into the sun. His authority is quiet, emanating from him like heat from a stone. And now, you have to navigate the subtle politics of getting back into his good graces. This is a far more complex challenge than packing a camel or tending a sore foot. This is a game of nuance, of gesture, of unspoken understanding. It's not unlike modern office politics, really. Alton is the terrifyingly efficient boss who never raises his voice, but whose quiet disappointment can make you want to crawl into a hole and never come out. Your momentary delay has, in his eyes, jeopardized the rhythm and security of the group. As you get Rustum and Soraya ready to move, you work with a performative efficiency. You check straps that you know are secure. You arrange your own pack with unnecessary precision. You are careful to stay in his peripheral vision, a model of a dutiful and repentant merchant. You even offer your last dried fig to one of his junior guards, a small, deferential gesture that you hope gets noted and passed up the chain of command. You consider trying to approach Alton, to offer an explanation or an apology, but you dismiss the thought. His face looks like it hasn't cracked a smile since the Achaemenid Empire. A joke would likely be met with a long, silent stare that would drain all the moisture from your body. It's better to be invisible and efficient. The weight of his silent judgment is a heavier burden than the bales of silk on your camel's backs. This anxiety is compounded by another uncertainty. Scholars disagree on the exact nature of a caravan master's compensation. Was he a salaried professional, hired by a merchants' association in one of the great cities? Or did he operate more like a partner, taking a percentage of the value of the goods he guided safely to their destination? You suspect it's the latter. This would mean that your delay, your limping camel, isn't just an inconvenience to him. It's a direct threat to his income. Every hour lost is money out of his pocket. This thought does not make you feel any better. It makes his stare feel heavier, sharper. As the afternoon bleeds into evening, Alton finally calls the halt for the night. The spot he has chosen is, as always, perfect, a wide, flat area with a small, rocky outcrop to provide a meager break from the wind. Now, a new set of rules comes into play, Alton's personal quirks, the unwritten laws of his caravan. This is where fringe historical tidbits come to life, not in books, but in the tired actions of men at the end of a long day. He insists, for example, that every tent be pitched to face east. It's not for prayer, or for the morning sun. A younger merchant once made the mistake of asking why. Alton had fixed him with his flat gaze and explained that the desert is home to mischievous spirits, the jinn, who are drawn to the scent of sleeping men. By facing your tents east, you trick them. They see the openings and assume you have already risen and departed with the dawn, and so they pass you by. It makes no logical sense, but no one argues. His superstitions are now your laws. You are careful to pitch your small tent perfectly, the opening aligned to his exacting, spectral standards. Later, as you are portioning out some grain for your camels, Alton walks past. Your heart seizes. He stops and looks at Rustam's bandaged foot. He looks at you. You brace yourself for a lecture. But he says nothing about the camel. He points a single, bony finger at the water skin hanging from your saddle. It's leaking, he says. The word is flat, an accusation. Fix it. You open your mouth to protest. You checked it this morning, it's perfectly sound, but you close it again. You understand. This isn't about the water skin. It's about re-establishing the order of things. He is the master, you are the merchant. He sees all, and you are subject to his scrutiny. Yes, Master Alton, you murmur, bowing your head slightly. At once. He gives a single, sharp nod and walks away, the matter closed. You spend the next hour meticulously inspecting a perfectly good water skin, the taste of imaginary crow filling your mouth, more exhausted by the day's social maneuvering than the 20 miles you just walked. The new day dawns, and with it, the routine begins again. Before you even think about food or packing, you reach for the water skin Alton accused you of neglecting. The call back to yesterday's silent humiliation is immediate. You spent a good hour last night meticulously going over every seam of the goat hide bag, a piece of performative maintenance for an audience of one. Now, in the thin morning light, you unstopper the wooden plug. The worry that occupied you last night, the caravan master's mood, has evaporated, replaced by a much older and more fundamental concern. The water. You tip the bag and let a small amount trickle into a simple clay cup. You don't drink. Not yet. You hold it, staring into the small amount of liquid as if it holds the secrets of the day. This is your lifeblood. More than the bread, more than the dates, more than sleep itself. The constant, low-humming anxiety about the quantity and quality of your water is the baseline rhythm of your journey. You take a sip. It's not refreshing. It's lukewarm, and it carries the distinct, smoky, leathery taste of its container. This is a mainstream historical fact of life on these routes. Your water lives in a mashk, a bag made from a whole goat or sheepskin, cured and sealed with pitch. It is a marvel of low-tech engineering, but it is not known for improving the flavor profile of its contents. You've heard of Roman merchants using glass, but that seems like a fragile, ridiculous luxury out here. This leathery taste is the taste of survival. You do a quick mental calculation. You lift the bag, feeling its weight and heft. 2/3 full. The next reliable well, according to Alton's pronouncement last night, is 2 days away. Maybe 3 if the terrain is difficult. You do the math in your head. So many sips per hour. A little extra for the heat of the midday. A small amount to wash the dust from your mouth in the evening. You have to be a walking abacus of hydration. You glance at your camels. Rustam's foot seems better today, and he and Soraya are placidly chewing their cud. They are far more efficient with water than you are, but they are not immune to thirst. Their needs must also be factored into your quiet, desperate arithmetic. You almost laugh at the absurdity of it. Back home, you can walk to the neighborhood fountain. Here, you'd probably trade a small roll of silk for a guaranteed bottle of clean water. But there are no bottles, no guarantees. Finding water is one thing. Finding good water is another. The oases and wells that dot this landscape are the pearls on the string of the Silk Road, but some of those pearls are rotten. You think of the underground channels, the qanats, that bring water from distant mountains to some of the larger settlements. They are miracles of engineering. There is considerable debate among archaeologists and hydrologists about whether the knowledge to build these vast networks of tunnels spread from Persia eastwards, or if the technique developed independently in various desert cultures. To you, they are simply magic, a gift from the past. But out here, between the cities, you are at the mercy of simple wells, dug by generations of unknown hands. And a bad well can be more dangerous than a bandit. Dysentery can sweep through a caravan, leaving it weakened and vulnerable. So you have your methods. These are the quirky, unwritten rules of water safety, the kind of fringe science that keeps you alive. Later in the day, when the caravan reaches a small, dusty well surrounded by suspiciously sparse vegetation, you watch the others rush to fill their skins. You hang back. First, you watch the animals. You let Rustam approach the trough. He sniffs the water, his large nostrils flaring. He hesitates, then takes a long, slow drink. This is a good sign. He is a discerning professional. If he had turned away, you wouldn't have gone near it. Then, you fill your own cup and perform your second test. You take a small piece of charcoal, scavenged from the embers of last night's fire, and drop it into the water. You let it sit for a moment. The old hands say the carbon draws out the bitterness, that bad air in the water. It's a ritual that gives you a sliver of control in a world where you have very little. You see a young merchant from the back of the caravan drinking straight from the trough, his face buried in the water. You make a mental note to pitch your tent upwind of his tonight, a quiet act of preventative medicine. You fill your water skin, the one that doesn't leak, feeling the satisfying weight return to it. But the worry never really leaves. It just resets. The bag is full now, but the water inside is an unknown quantity. It could be fine. It could be the start of a week of stomach-churning misery. This is the gamble you take every time you stop. You look at the sloshing, murky contents of your cup before taking a deep drink. You'd probably pay a fortune for the modern convenience of a 5-star rating system for desert wells. As it is, you have to rely on a camel's opinion and a piece of burnt wood. You take another sip of the lukewarm, leathery liquid. It's not a pleasure. It's a transaction. You are buying another few hours of life. For now, that is more than enough. The caravan moves on from the well, your water skin reassuringly heavy against your side. Alton, the caravan master, seems to have forgotten your existence, which is the best you can hope for. Rustam's limp has all but vanished, his bandaged foot a small, white flag of a victory won. With your major anxieties, your cargo, your camel, your commander, your water, all temporarily placated, a new adversary begins to creep in from the edges of your perception. It's a foe more vast and patient than any other. It is the sheer, crushing emptiness of the landscape, and the profound boredom it inspires. The initial grandeur of the journey has long since faded. Now, there is only the slow, metronomic plodding of feet and the endless expanse of beige. The sun climbs. The heat shimmers above the dusty ground. The horizon is a flat, unwavering line that you never seem to get any closer to. The sky is a brilliant, featureless blue. There is nothing to look at. Nothing changes. The only sounds are the ones you've been hearing for weeks, the creak of leather, the soft padding of camel feet, the whisper of the wind, the occasional cough from a fellow traveler. Your brain, starved of new information, begins to feel thick and slow. You find yourself staring at the back of the camel in front of you for what feels like hours, mesmerized by the hypnotic sway of its tail. This isn't the peaceful quiet of meditation. It's the dull, heavy silence of sensory deprivation, a uniquely wearing form of exhaustion. To fight it, you have your methods. Little mental games to keep the gears of your mind from grinding to a halt. This is a quirky, unwritten part of your day, a fringe activity that no one would ever think to record. You play a game you call the Merchant's Inventory. You try to list every single item you have with you, from the 70 bolts of silk in your main bale down to the single, slightly bent sewing needle in your repair kit. You picture each item, feel its weight, remember where you packed it. Then you do it all again, backwards. When that fails, you try to recite the genealogies of the great kings, or compose terrible, rambling poetry in your head that you hope you'll forget by the next step. It's the ancient equivalent of scrolling through a phone with only one very boring app on it. Historians and anthropologists speculate on the psychological toll of such long, monotonous journeys. Did travelers develop specific coping mechanisms, forms of meditation or storytelling, to maintain their sanity, or was there simply a grim, vacant acceptance of the emptiness? You know the answer. It's both. The boredom would be manageable if it weren't for the food. The two are allies, working together to grind down your spirit. When Alton finally signals the stop for the midday meal, there is no excitement, no anticipation. There is only resignation. You sit in the sliver of shade provided by your camel and unwrap your lunch. It is the same lunch you had yesterday, and the same lunch you will have tomorrow. This is the mainstream, historical reality of the traveler's diet, a menu dictated by the harsh requirements of preservation. First, there is the flatbread. It was baked weeks ago, and now has the consistency of a wooden shingle. It's nourishing, yes, but you have to break it off in small pieces and let it soften in your mouth to avoid scraping your throat raw. Then there is the meat. Strips of dried mutton, so tough and salty they are practically fossilized. You gnaw on a piece, your jaw working hard for very little reward. It tastes more of salt and thyme than it does of meat. You suspect that if you dropped it on a rock, the rock would be the one to break. To accompany this feast, you have a small lump of hard, intensely salty cheese that squeaks against your teeth, and a handful of wrinkled, sticky dates. The sudden burst of sugar from a date is the only moment of genuine pleasure in the entire meal, a fleeting oasis of flavor in a desert of blandness. You look at the other merchants. They are all engaged in the same joyless task, chewing with a grim, mechanical determination. No one speaks. There is nothing to say. You are all just refueling your bodies, stoking the engine for the afternoon's journey. You gnaw on your piece of jerky and think that it has the exact texture and probably the same flavor as the sole of your leather boot. You briefly contemplate a side-by-side comparison for the sake of science, but you're worried the boot might taste better, a discovery your morale might not be able to handle. This is the true, mundane worry of the mid-journey. Not the dramatic fear of a sudden attack, but the slow, corrosive drip of monotony and bad food. It saps your will. It makes you question your choices. Why didn't you become a potter? Potters stay in one place. Potters eat hot stew. You close your eyes and fantasize about a bowl of lamb and apricot stew from your favorite cookshop in Samarkand. You can almost smell the cinnamon and cumin, feel the warmth of the bowl in your hands. The vision is so clear, so painfully real. Then you open your eyes, and there is only the shimmering heat, the taste of salt and dust, and another 4 hours of walking to look forward to. You take a sip of your leathery water and force down another piece of bread. The journey must go on. The grim ritual of the midday meal is over, its bland memory already fading into the greater blandness of the afternoon. As the caravan plods back into its familiar, hypnotic rhythm, the boredom you felt this morning returns with a vengeance. The brief distraction of chewing on fossilized meat has passed, and the vast, empty landscape once again threatens to swallow your thoughts. But today, the silence is not entirely empty. It is punctuated by a sound, a persistent, whining drone that cuts through the whisper of the wind like a dull saw. It is the voice of Parvarize, and he has decided to walk next to you. Parvarize is a Persian merchant, trading in saffron and lapis lazuli. He is not a bad man. He is, in his own way, a good man. But he is a complainer. He is a connoisseur of complaints, a poet of pessimism. He finds fault with the sun, too bright, the dust, too dusty, and the pace of the caravan, too slow, and also somehow too fast. His voice, a constant stream of grievances, is more grating than a handful of sand in your shoe. After listening to his lengthy critique of the very same flatbread you were just internally maligning, you realize a profound truth: misery does not, in fact, love company. It hates company. Especially when that company is just a louder, more articulate version of its own internal monologue. You look around at the caravan, a slow-moving river of humanity. This is a mainstream, historical fact of the Silk Road. It was a profoundly multicultural enterprise. You are Sogdian. Parvarize is Persian. The men handling the lead camels are Turkic nomads hired for their expertise. Somewhere ahead, a revered Buddhist monk from Bactria travels with his acolytes. You've even heard there's a small contingent of Chinese soldiers escorting a diplomat in another part of the caravan. It is a rolling city of strangers, a temporary society bound not by shared culture or language, but by a shared destination and a shared desire for profit. This diversity is what makes the journey possible, but it is also what makes Parvarai's whining so difficult to deal with. There is no common book of etiquette to draw from. Your mundane worry for the afternoon is simple: how to make him stop talking without causing an open conflict. You can't just tell him to be quiet. That would be an insult, and a feud is the last thing you need. You have to see this man every day for the next 3 months. So you must be subtle. You must find a way to communicate your desperate need for silence across a cultural divide. You decide to deploy a trusted, non-verbal tactic, a piece of quirky, unwritten road law. You reach into your pack and pull out your small utility knife and a smooth, flat whetstone. Without a word, you begin to sharpen the blade, your movement slow, deliberate, and intensely focused. Your eyes are fixed on the steel. The rhythmic shhhk, shhhk, shhhk of the stone against the blade is a sound that says, I am engaged in a serious and potentially dangerous task. My concentration is absolute. I am not available for conversation. It is the ancient equivalent of putting on a large pair of headphones. It doesn't work. Parvarais watches you for a moment, then leans in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as if the noise of the sharpening is a sign you want to share secrets. That's a good blade, he begins. It reminds me of a time my uncle's second cousin bought a knife in Kasha. The story is long. It is boring. It involves a stolen goat and a dispute over a watermelon. Your plan has failed so spectacularly that you almost want to laugh. You briefly consider just handing the freshly sharpened knife to him, point first, but you suspect the subtlety of the gesture would be lost on him. You continue to sharpen your blade, your shoulders slumping in defeat, and you ponder a larger question. It remains a subject of debate among social historians how interpersonal conflicts between merchants of different cultures were truly handled on the road. The caravan master, Alton, was the court of last resort for theft or violence. But what about the small things? The daily frictions, the personality clashes, the man who simply will not stop talking? How were these fires put out before they grew? You are living this academic question, and you have no answer. Then Parvarais crosses a line. He gestures with his chin towards your camel. I saw your beast was limping yesterday, he says, his tone dripping with unsolicited concern. You used a simple herb poultice? A mistake. My grandmother always said the only real cure for a foot ailment is a paste made of goat butter and crushed river pearls. The sheer, unadulterated stupidity of the advice, combined with the implicit criticism of your own skills, makes something in your brain snap. You stop walking. The whole world seems to fall silent for a second. You slowly, deliberately, put your knife and whetstone away. You turn your body to face him fully. You look him directly in the eyes. You do not raise your voice. You speak calmly, softly, as if discussing the weather. Parvarais, you say, letting the name hang in the air for a moment. The path is long. Let us save our words for the campfires. The effect is instantaneous. He blinks, his mouth slightly open. He had been expecting an argument, a debate, perhaps even gratitude. He was not expecting a quiet, polite, and utterly final dismissal. He looks flustered, mumbles something you can't hear, and then nods quickly. He picks up his pace, moving ahead to walk alongside another merchant, leaving you blessedly, wonderfully alone. A wave of pure, unadulterated silence washes over you. It is the most beautiful sound in the world. The only noise is the wind and the soft tread of your camels. It is so peaceful, so perfect, you wonder if you could somehow bottle it. You'd probably make a greater profit on silence than you ever will on silk. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the vast, empty sky in hues of orange and purple. You are sitting by your small, smoky fire, built from the dried camel dung that is the ubiquitous fuel of this treeless world. A profound sense of peace settles over you, a peace made all the more sweet by its contrast with the afternoon's irritation. In the blessed silence left by Parvarize, you can finally hear the world again, the gentle bubbling of a pot of water, the soft snuffling of the resting camels, the distant murmur of another merchant's evening prayer. This quiet allows you to notice things. And as you begin the routine task of unloading Soraya, your smaller camel, your eye catches it. A detail you would have missed if your mind were still cluttered with annoyance. It's a fray. The rope is thick, one of 4 main tethers holding a heavy bale of your precious silk onto the wooden pack saddle. It hasn't snapped, but in one section, about a hand's breadth long, the tightly wound strands have worn thin. Some are severed completely, leaving a fuzzy, weakened spot that sticks out like a sore thumb. A new worry, small and sharp, pierces your evening calm. During the day's journey, this frayed section could have given way at any moment. The thought of a 500-pound bale of silk thudding to the ground, potentially splitting open or spooking the entire caravan into a stampede, makes your stomach clench. Tonight, you have another job. You are no longer a merchant. You are a mender of ropes. You examine the material closely. This is no ordinary rope. It's a mainstream fact that travelers on these routes relied on ropes made from whatever was durable and available. This one is hand-twisted from coarse camel hair, a material known for its strength and resistance to the abrasive desert conditions. It's rough against your skin, stiff and unyielding. The art of the journey is not just in the buying and selling, but in the intimate knowledge of these materials. Knowing how to tie a diamond hitch that won't slip is as vital a skill as knowing how to haggle for a good price on gemstones. And knowing how to fix a problem like this is what separates a seasoned merchant from a man who loses his cargo in the middle of the Taklamakan desert. From a small, worn leather pouch, your emergency kit, you pull out your tools. There's a thick bronze needle with a large, clumsy-looking eye, a spool of thread made of sinew that has been heavily coated in beeswax, a lump of hardened beeswax, and a small, sharp knife. It's the ancient world's version of a high-end toolkit, though you suspect a modern one comes with a significantly lower chance of contracting a fatal infection if you prick your finger. You set to work by the flickering light of your fire. The task requires patience and focus. This is your mundane battle for the evening, fought not with a sword, but with a needle and thread. As you work the tough, organic fibers, you think about how fragile history is. Archaeologists and materials scientists debate the full extent of textile and rope-making technologies from this era, precisely because the materials themselves so rarely survive. For every gold coin or clay pot they unearth from the sand, 1,000 ropes like this one, 100 leather bags, and 10,000 woolen cloaks have simply vanished, eaten by time, returning to the dust they traveled over. Your small act of repair is part of a vast, unwritten history of maintenance, a history of which almost no evidence remains. You don't just patch the rope. You perform a piece of fringe, practical magic that another old merchant taught you years ago. First, you use your knife to carefully untwist the frayed section, separating the damaged strands. From another pouch, you pull a small hank of raw, cleaned camel hair, which you carry for exactly this purpose. You carefully spin the new hair into the old, weakened strands, weaving them together until the rope is thick and solid once again. Then, you take your waxed sinew and whip the spliced section tightly, your big needle plunging through the tough fibers with a series of satisfying crunches. It's an ugly repair, bulky and uneven, looking a bit like a snake that has swallowed a rabbit. But it is strong. For the final touch, you take the lump of beeswax and rub it vigorously over the entire repair. The friction and the heat from the nearby fire melts the wax slightly, allowing it to soak deep into the fibers. This not only binds the splice together but also makes it waterproof, protecting your handiwork from the ravages of moisture. The smell of melting wax and hot metal fills the air around you. It's a good smell. It is the smell of a problem being solved. It's the smell of competence. You hold the finished rope in your hands, pulling it with all your weight. It holds firm. The bale will be secure tomorrow. The small, quiet satisfaction you feel is more profound than any joy you might get from a successful day of trading. The profits from the silk are for a distant future. This solid rope is for tomorrow. It's a concrete victory against the forces of chaos and decay that govern this road. You look at your ugly, lumpy, but incredibly strong repair and allow yourself a small, tired smile. If this whole merchant thing doesn't pan out, you might have a promising career in highly specialized, artisanal rope mending. The pay is probably terrible, but at least the work is honest. Several days have passed since you mended the rope. It holds strong, a small, ugly knot of reassurance on Rustam's flank. The caravan has fallen back into its comforting, monotonous rhythm. The incident with Parvarize is forgotten, the memory of his whining voice having been scoured from your mind by the blessed, abrasive wind. Your worries have receded to a low tide. And then, you see it. At first, it's just a smudge on the horizon, a slight vertical interruption in the endless horizontal line of the landscape. But as you draw closer, it resolves into the unmistakable shape of a watchtower. A checkpoint. Instantly, the placid atmosphere within the caravan curdles. A low murmur ripples through the merchants. The easy, plodding pace tightens with a shared, unspoken anxiety. Ahead lies not a physical danger, but a far more unpredictable one: bureaucracy. This is a mainstream feature of the Silk Road. The great empires, the Han Chinese in the east, the Kushans and Persians in the west, and the dozens of smaller kingdoms in between all sought to control and, more importantly, to tax the river of wealth that flowed along these routes. Garrisons like this one were stationed at strategic points, oases, and mountain passes. They were the gatekeepers, the official guardians of the road, and your next mundane worry is how to get past them with your cargo, and most of your profits, intact. As you get closer, you automatically do a mental check of your equipment. The ropes are strong, a small comfort. The packs are secure. But this is not a problem you can solve with a needle and thread. This is a performance, and you are about to go on stage. Your first move is to retrieve your documents. From a hidden pouch sewn into the lining of your robe, you pull out a folded piece of parchment and a small wooden tablet. The parchment is a letter of passage from a magistrate in your home city. The wooden tablet, or yang as some of the eastern merchants call it, bears the faint, stamped clay seal of the official at the last major town, proof that you have already paid taxes there. You squint at the seal. Is it clear enough? Will the guard be able to read it? You have a sudden, irrational fear that the bored-looking functionary who stamped it 3 weeks ago had a personal vendetta against Sogdian silk merchants and used a faulty seal on purpose. The whims of minor officials, you've learned, are one of the most powerful and terrifying forces in the known world. Your second move is to prepare the bribe. It's not a sordid exchange of coins in the shadows. It's a recognized, almost formal part of the process. This is a quirky, fringe aspect of commerce that would never be written into law but is understood by all. From a special compartment in one of your bags, you retrieve a small roll of silk. It's a beautiful piece, dyed a deep indigo, but it has a minor flaw in the weaving that makes it unsuitable for a high-paying client. Among merchants, this is known as a darvazagushar, a gate opener. It is a gift that says, "I am a serious person." You are a serious person. Let us not waste one another's valuable time with a lengthy inspection. As you ready the silk, you ponder the true purpose of this place. Debate continues among historians regarding the true function of these remote garrisons. Were they legitimate instruments of imperial control and security, or were they little more than officially sanctioned extortion rackets run by local commanders? Looking at the sun-bleached, slightly dilapidated mud brick fort ahead, you're banking heavily on the latter. Alton, your caravan master, rides ahead to negotiate the passage of the caravan as a whole. After a lengthy discussion, he returns, and the process begins. One by one, the guards approach the merchants. When a stocky, bored-looking soldier with a patchy beard arrives at your station, your heart gives a little flutter. You offer a respectful bow. You present your documents. He takes them, glances at them for a fraction of a second with utter disinterest, and hands them back. His eyes are on your cargo. This is the moment. A long and dusty road, you say with a polite smile. We are grateful for the protection of your commander's soldiers. Then, you present the gate opener. A small token of our esteem for the commander. Perhaps his wife has a use for it. The soldier takes the roll. He doesn't smile, but he runs the fabric through his fingers, feeling its quality. His wife, you think, must have enough flawed silk to refolster the Gobi Desert, but that's not the point. The ritual has been observed. He gives a curt, almost imperceptible nod. He takes a piece of chalk from his belt and scrawls a quick, jagged line on your lead bale. The mark of passage. You are free to go. The relief is so intense it feels like a physical weight has been lifted from your shoulders. You have successfully paid the convenience fee, the convenience of not having your expertly packed cargo upended in the dust for a 2-hour inspection. As you guide Rustam and Soraya through the gate, you see Parvariz, the complainer, in a heated argument with another guard. He is gesticulating wildly, pointing to his documents, refusing to pay the informal toll. And next to him, 2 other soldiers are already untying the ropes on his bales. You feel a brief pang of sympathy, quickly replaced by a wave of weary satisfaction. You understood the rules of the game. He did not. This is just another cost of doing business, another mundane worry successfully navigated on the long, long road to market. The garrison checkpoint is behind you, its memory already fading into a simple entry in your mental ledger, 1 roll of flawed indigo silk for 1 day of peace. The caravan is camped just a few miles past the gate, and a sense of relief hangs in the air. But a new day brings a new kind of challenge. The path ahead winds through a series of treacherous, rocky canyons, a landscape unfamiliar to even a seasoned traveler like your caravan master, Alton. For this next leg of the journey, local knowledge is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And so, a man has been summoned from a nearby village. A guide. This is where the next mundane worry begins to bloom, a quiet dread born of the simple fact that you cannot understand a word this man is saying. The guide is short and stocky, with eyes that have seen 1,000 sunrises in these canyons. He is likely of Turkic or Tokharian stock, and he speaks a dialect that is as alien to your Sogdian ears as the chirping of birds. Your own tongue, Sogdian, is a mainstream historical fact of this world. It has become the lingua franca of trade, the common commercial language spoken in markets from the edges of Persia to the borders of China. But its reach is not infinite. Here, in this man's home, your words are useless. Alton knows this. And so, another merchant, a man named Rashad who trades in dried herbs and boasts of his travels, steps forward. He claims to know a little of both languages. He will be your bridge, your translator. And as you look at his shifty eyes and overly confident smile, you have a sinking feeling that the bridge is about to collapse. The negotiation begins. Alton, ever the pragmatist, asks the first and most important question via Rashad. How many days to cross the pass safely? Rashad turns to the guide and speaks. It's a short, clipped sentence. The guide, in response, unleashes a torrent of words. He speaks for nearly a minute, his hands carving shapes in the air, his tone rising and falling with emphasis, pointing at the distant peaks and then at the ground. It seems like a complex, detailed, and vital explanation. When he finally falls silent, everyone turns to Rashad for the translation. He strokes his chin thoughtfully and says, 3 days. A long silence follows. You look at Alton. Alton looks at you. It's painfully obvious that about 90% of the information has just been lost, like water poured into a sieve. This is the ancient world's version of a bad internet connection, and you're trying to download a critical piece of software. You watch this unfolding disaster, and you can't help but wonder about the man in the middle. It is a point of ongoing scholarly discussion just how these vital translation skills were acquired. Were there formal schools in the great trading cities where one could learn the tongues of the road? Or was it a messy, informal craft, learned on the job, passed from one merchant to another, accumulating errors and misunderstandings like dust on a cloak? Looking at Rashad's increasingly sweaty brow, you're convinced it's the latter. He is a walking example of the fake-it-till-you-make-it school of linguistics. The exchange continues, growing more fraught with every question. Then comes the gesture. Alton, wanting to know if there is a safe place to make camp on the first night, points towards the canyon entrance and then brings his hands together beside his tilted head, the universal sign for sleep. Rashad conveys this. The guide's friendly expression vanishes. His eyes go wide in alarm, and he takes a step back, shaking his head frantically. He lets loose another stream of guttural words, this time pointing at Alton and making a sharp, slicing motion across his own throat. The mood plummets from tense to terrifying. Rashad turns to the group, his face pale. I believe, he stammers, he thinks you have just asked him if the canyon is a good place to be murdered in your sleep. Well, that's not good. You've just learned a quirky and potentially fatal lesson in cross-cultural communication. A gesture for a rest in your world is a clear signifier of a death in his. The negotiation is now in ruins. Alton is red-faced with anger, and the guide looks ready to bolt. Before the whole enterprise collapses, you decide to intervene. You step forward, catch the guide's eye, and hold up your hands in a gesture of peace. You don't say a word. Instead, you point to the sun. You slowly trace its path across the sky, from sunrise to noon to sunset. Then you perform the sleep eye gesture. You do this 3 times. It's a simple, universal narrative: day 1, day 2, day 3. The guide watches your performance, his expression shifting from suspicion to understanding. A slow smile spreads across his face. He nods enthusiastically and holds up 3 fingers. Then he kneels, draws a crude map of the canyon in the dust, and decisively taps a spot midway through the first day's journey. You've done it. You've bypassed your faulty human translator with the even older language of pantomime. You might not be a linguist, but it turns out you're passably fluent in charades. A wave of relief washes over the small group. But as the guide is formally hired and the price is agreed upon, using a simple system of counting out silver coins, the worry doesn't completely vanish. It just settles into a lower, more persistent hum. You know it will take 3 days. You know where you will likely camp. But what else did he say in that first, long, detailed explanation? What nuance was lost? What warnings about rock falls, or flash floods, or bitter winds were left behind in the gulf of misunderstanding? You have a timeline, but you are walking into the details completely blind. You are 2 days into the canyon pass. The world has shrunk to towering rock walls on either side, the sky a narrow, blue ribbon far above. The silence here is different from the silence of the open desert. It's a heavy, oppressive quiet that echoes every sound: the clatter of a dislodged stone, the grunt of a camel, the cryptic, one-word commands of your new guide. The communication difficulties have settled into a background hum of anxiety. You simply follow him, trusting that his gestures and your group's pantomime have forged a reliable, if rudimentary, understanding. And it is in this claustrophobic, tense environment that a new enemy makes its presence known. It is not a bandit, nor a bureaucrat, nor a broken piece of equipment. It is a dull, persistent throb in your upper right molar. At first, it's just a minor annoyance, a background note in the symphony of the day's discomforts. You try to ignore it, focusing on the careful footing required by the rocky path. But the note gets louder. The dull throb sharpens into a distinct, pulsing pain. Every time you draw a breath of the cold mountain air, it feels like a tiny needle is being driven into your jaw. You explore the tooth with your tongue and feel a sharp, jagged edge that wasn't there before. Your mind immediately flashes back to the rock-hard flatbread from a few days ago, the one that required the full force of your jaw to conquer. It seems your tooth was the loser in that particular battle. The grand, dramatic landscape of the canyon fades away. Your entire world, your entire consciousness, contracts to the microscopic, pulsating universe of a single, agonizing tooth. This is a mundane worry of the highest order because it is inescapable. And you are keenly aware of the grim historical reality of your situation. Dental health in your time is a matter of luck and genetics. The coarse, stone-ground flour used in your bread is full of grit that wears down enamel. While refined sugar is a luxury you rarely encounter, decay is still rampant. There are no dentists, no fillings, no root canals. There are only 2 futures for a bad tooth: either it develops a painful abscess that could poison your blood and kill you, or you find a man, usually a barber or a blacksmith with strong hands and a stronger stomach, to yank it out of your head with a pair of pliers and no anesthetic. Neither option seems particularly appealing right now. The pain intensifies. You would gladly listen to Parvarize recite the entire history of his family's ailments if it would grant you 5 minutes of relief. You would cheerfully hand over another gate opener roll of silk. The external problems you have faced seem trivial, manageable. This is an internal siege. At the next stop, you rummage desperately through your personal pouch. You find what you're looking for, a small cloth bag containing a handful of dried cloves. You take one of the small, woody buds and, with a grimace, place it directly against the offending tooth, biting down gently. The effect is immediate and overwhelming. A powerful, spicy, numbing sensation floods your gum, the sharp, medicinal taste a welcome assault on your senses. The pain recedes, beaten back by the clove's pungent magic. It is a temporary, blessed ceasefire. But the ceasefire doesn't last. An hour later, the throbbing returns, seemingly angrier for its brief suppression. In desperation, you approach an older merchant, a man who trades in herbs and folk remedies. You explain your predicament. He nods knowingly, his face a mask of sympathy. The problem, he tells you with great authority, is not the tooth itself. It is a tooth worm. A tiny, white worm, he explains, has burrowed into your tooth and is gnawing on the root. This was a widespread belief, a fringe piece of medical folklore accepted as fact. To get rid of it, he says, you must smoke it out. The ritual involves heating a mixture of henbane seeds on a piece of hot iron and inhaling the smoke through a funnel. The worm, overcome by the fumes, will drop out into a waiting bowl of water. You stare at him, the throbbing in your jaw momentarily forgotten, replaced by sheer disbelief. There is ongoing debate among medical historians as to whether the tooth worm was a genuine folk belief or simply a powerful metaphor for the gnawing, invisible nature of the pain. Frankly, you don't care about the academic distinctions. All you know is that henbane is a well-known poison, and the idea of voluntarily inhaling its hallucinogenic fumes while in the middle of a treacherous mountain pass seems like a spectacularly bad idea. Smoking out a demon worm sounds less like a cure and more like a punishment. You thank him for his wisdom and politely decline, deciding to stick with the agony you know. For the rest of the day, you are locked in a silent, miserable battle with your own body. Every step sends a jolt through your jaw. You can't eat. You can barely think. Late in the afternoon, you discover a simple, temporary reprieve by accident. Taking a sip of cool water from your water skin, you hold it in your mouth, letting the liquid swill around the tooth. The cold is a blissful shock, calming the inflamed nerve. The relief is exquisite. You've found a solution, albeit a ridiculous one. For the final hour of the day's march, you walk with your cheek puffed out, a small reservoir of cool water cradling your tooth. You get a few strange looks, but you are far beyond caring about your dignity. If it keeps the worm, or whatever it is, quiet, you would happily walk to the edge of the world looking like a confused squirrel. You emerge from the canyon pass like a man leaving a dark room, blinking in the sudden, wide-open expanse of the sky. The oppressive weight of the rock walls is gone, replaced by rolling hills and a horizon that feels miles away. This should be a relief, a moment of triumph. But your personal geography has not changed. You are still trapped in the claustrophobic confines of your own jaw, where the nagging toothache from the past few days has escalated into a full-blown siege. The trick of holding water in your mouth now offers only fleeting moments of peace. The pain is a constant, grinding reality, and it is making you desperate. In a moment of particularly intense, throbbing agony, you find your hand instinctively going to the small, leather-wrapped bundle that hangs on a cord around your neck. You bought it weeks ago in a bustling caravanserai from a man with kind eyes and a reassuring voice. It is a protective amulet. He told you it was blessed by a famous Nestorian holy man and contained a relic that would ward off sickness, evil spirits, and the unseen arrows of misfortune. You have clutched it for reassurance many times before, but today, you clutch it with the desperation of a drowning man reaching for a log. You whisper a silent, fervent prayer to whatever power it might hold, pleading for an end to this torment. The use of such objects is a mainstream historical fact, as common on the Silk Road as the camels themselves. This great artery of trade was also a great artery of faith. Zoroastrians, Buddhists, Manichaeans, Nestorian Christians, and followers of countless local deities and spirits all traveled together. In the face of the road's constant uncertainty, most merchants adopted a practical approach to the divine, hedging their spiritual bets. It was not uncommon for a man to pray in a Buddhist temple in one town and buy a talisman from a Zoroastrian mage in the next. These amulets were not decorations, they were considered essential pieces of personal protective equipment. As you hold the amulet, trying to draw some mystical power from it, something feels wrong. The shape under the worn leather feels mundane. For the first time, driven by pain and a sliver of doubt, you decide to look at what you actually paid 100 silver pieces for. With fumbling fingers, you work at the tight leather knots. The cord is old and stiff. Finally, it comes loose. You peel back the leather wrapping. And you stare. There is no saint's finger bone. There is no sacred text written on a grain of rice. There is no fragment of a forgotten temple. Inside is a rock. A plain, flat, grey river stone, about the size of your thumb. It has a few clumsy symbols painted on it in a reddish dye that you now realize, with a sinking heart, is probably just berry juice. The truth washes over you in a wave of cold, clear disappointment. You've been had. You have been whispering your deepest fears and pleas to a common rock. It's the ancient world's equivalent of discovering your expensive, top-of-the-line magical artifact is just a cheap knockoff from a market stall. The seller had spun a beautiful tale. This quirky, fringe piece of fraudulent magic had a whole backstory. He'd claimed it was a chitair of the mountain, a stone that had rolled down from a sacred peak near the oasis of Turfan, and that it held the trapped echoes of a holy man's final prayer. The symbols, he had assured you, were from an ancient language of angels. Looking at them now, you see they are just meaningless squiggles. He wasn't a mystic. He was just a very, very good salesman. You feel a fool. The feeling is worse than anger. It's a hollow, embarrassing ache that settles in your stomach. Scholars of religion and folklore often debate the blurry line between formal religious practice and transactional folk magic. Was your purchase of the amulet a sincere act of faith, or was it simply the buying of a magical service, like hiring a guard? Right now, it feels like you simply made a very bad investment. The tooth still throbs, but it is now joined by the phantom pain of your lightened coin purse. You have to admire the seller's business model, though. The cost of materials is practically zero. You weigh the useless rock in your palm, your first instinct to hurl it as far as you can. But you stop. You think back over the past few weeks. Has the rock truly done nothing? No. The idea of the rock, the belief in its power, has been a constant comfort. It gave you a measure of peace. It quieted your anxieties. In a way, you got exactly what you paid for, a temporary reprieve from worry. The magic wasn't in the stone, it was in the story you told yourself about the stone. It's a surprisingly deep and philosophical realization for a man whose primary goal at the moment is to stop his tooth from exploding. With a sigh of resignation, you carefully rewrap the silly rock in its leather pouch and tie the knots. You place it back around your neck. It is no longer an amulet against evil spirits. It is now an amulet against gullibility. Its new magical power is to protect you from smooth-talking salesmen with kind eyes. A very specific, and perhaps far more useful, kind of protection. The tooth still hurts, but you feel a little wiser. And a lot poorer. The day after your disappointing discovery of the pet rock amulet, you wake in a foul mood. Your tooth has settled into a low, malevolent grumble, and the weight of your own foolishness hangs around your neck more heavily than the fake talisman itself. The landscape offers no comfort. The brief drama of the canyons has given way to a vast, featureless plain that stretches to the edges of the world. It is the perfect stage for the arrival of your next mundane tormentor, the wind. It starts not as a gale, but as a persistent, whining breeze. Within an hour, it has grown into a relentless, bullying force. This is not the stuff of legends, not a world-ending sandstorm that blots out the sun. It is something far more common, and in its own way, far more miserable. It is a wind seemingly engineered for the sole purpose of grinding down your spirit. It is strong enough to whip sand into your eyes and food, but not strong enough to halt the caravan's progress. And so you walk on, head down, into the teeth of it. This is not a battle, it is a siege of attrition. You, like every other seasoned traveler here, are dressed for this. It's a mainstream fact of road life that your clothing is your first and last line of defense against the elements. You wear a long, heavy woolen robe over your linen tunic, the layers trapping air for warmth in the cold mornings and providing a barrier against the sun's bite. Most importantly, you have a long length of cotton cloth, your turban, which now becomes a multi-purpose tool. You expertly unwind a length of it and wrap it across the lower half of your face, creating a mask that covers your nose and mouth. It's a simple, effective technology that makes the air you breathe slightly less saturated with dust. But the wind is insidious. It finds every tiny gap in your armor. It whistles in your ears, a constant, high-pitched drone that makes the lingering throb in your tooth feel 10 times sharper. It forces its way down your collar, carrying a payload of fine, gritty dust that settles on your skin. It whips at the hem of your robe, snapping it against your legs with every step. The entire world dissolves into a grey-brown haze, the sun a pale, distant disk. You feel less like a merchant traveling a great road and more like a small, miserable insect crawling across a vast, dusty floor. This wind, you decide, is the toddler of all weather phenomena. It's not truly dangerous, but its capacity for generating relentless, wearying annoyance is boundless. You plod onward, lost in the misery, and ponder the climate itself. Climatologists and historians continue to debate the precise environmental conditions of Central Asia in this era. Was this part of a great warming period, making the land drier and the winds more ferocious than they are today? Or are you just having a particularly unlucky week? Stumbling forward as another gust nearly tears the pack from your shoulder, you feel confident that you are a victim of exceptional meteorological misfortune. The wind makes you feel clumsy and stupid, but you have a few pieces of fringe knowledge to fight back. Remembering the advice of a true desert nomad you once shared a fire with, you halt for a moment and retie your face covering. It's a specific, complex series of folds, creating a small, open channel near your mouth for easier breathing while reinforcing the cloth over your nose into a more effective filter. It's a tiny adjustment, a piece of practical wisdom that makes a significant difference. It doesn't stop the misery, but it lessens it. It is a small victory against the howling chaos. The true test of your patience comes at the midday meal. The act of eating becomes a frantic, comical battle. You have to turn your back to the wind, hunching over your food like a vulture protecting its kill. You try to take a bite of your flatbread, and a gust nearly snatches it from your hand. Dust, a fine silt, settles over everything, giving your salty cheese a new, crunchy texture. You chew the gritty meal and reflect that you've finally discovered the local flavor, the true terroir of the region. It tastes of dirt. You're fairly certain this culinary trend won't be catching on. By late afternoon, the psychological toll is evident throughout the caravan. The constant, draining noise and physical discomfort have frayed everyone's nerves. You see two merchants get into a sharp, angry argument over a tangled rope, their voices snatched away by the wind. This invisible force is eroding more than just the landscape, it's eroding the fragile social bonds of your temporary community. As the sun begins its descent, the wind, as if tired of its own tantrum, finally begins to die down. The silence it leaves in its wake is a physical presence, a blessing that soothes your raw nerves. You stop and shake your head, and a small cloud of dust billows out from your turban. You have probably inhaled enough of the landscape today to plant a small but respectable garden in your lungs. The wind, your tormentor for the past 2 days, has finally exhausted itself, leaving behind a world that feels unnaturally still and quiet. For days you have walked through the calm, the memory of the gritty wind, and your gritty food, slowly receding. The mood in the caravan begins to lift, a palpable sense of anticipation replacing the dull resignation of the long, open trail. Then you see it. A dark, solid line on the horizon, growing steadily thicker and more defined with every hour. It is not a trick of the light, nor a range of low hills. It is a wall. It is the city. A wave of profound relief washes over you. Civilization. A real bed, a hot meal, a bath. The thought is so beautiful it's almost painful. But this initial joy is immediately chased by a familiar, cold dread. For between you and that bath stands the city gate and its notoriously thorough customs officials. This is not a lonely garrison in the middle of nowhere, staffed by a few bored soldiers. This is a major Central Asian metropolis, a jewel of the Silk Road like Bukhara or Merv. It's a mainstream historical fact that these cities were formidable. As you draw closer, you can see the details, high, thick walls of baked earth and straw, punctuated by defensive towers. Outside the walls sprawls the Rabad, a chaotic and vibrant suburb of workshops, stables, and the homes of the city's poorer artisans. This is where the caravan will halt, in the noisy, messy embrace of the city's outer edge. The city itself is a fortress, and its gate is its primary weapon of financial extraction. The anxiety you felt at the last checkpoint was a gentle flutter. This is a heavy, pounding drumbeat of dread. Your mind begins to race, running through the familiar checklist of worries. Is your manifest precisely correct? Did you remember to declare the small roll of saffron you took in trade a month ago? The gate opener tactic, the single roll of flawed silk, will not work here. These officials are not bored soldiers, they are professional tax collectors, men who can estimate the value of a bale of silk just by the way it sits on a camel. They will expect silver, and they will not be easily charmed. This is the ancient world's version of a final audit, except the auditors are armed and your appeal process is non-existent. Yet, amid the dread, there is a powerful, shining beacon of hope. The city means specialists. It means there will be a man who knows teeth. Perhaps a barber with a reputation for quick, clean extractions, or even a physician who might have herbs that can quell the angry spirit in your jaw for good. The thought of relief from the constant, grinding pain you've endured for over a week is a potent fantasy. That, and the dream of eating a bowl of hot stew that does not, for once, contain a significant portion of the local geology. This hope makes the coming ordeal with the customs officials both more bearable and more terrifying. You are so close to relief, and they are the final barrier. As you draw nearer, joining the slow-moving queue of farmers' carts, nomadic herdsmen, and other travelers, you are reminded of this city's most infamous and quirky local tax. It is a piece of inspired bureaucratic larceny known among merchants as the wheel tax. It has nothing to do with carts. It is a small but infuriating duty levied on every single pack animal, calculated by having the beast walk over a patch of damp earth and then taxing the merchant based on the number of footprints it leaves behind. It is arbitrary, insulting, and utterly impossible to argue with. It is a perfect, petty symbol of the state's power to take what it wants. The official manifest you will soon present feels like a work of fiction. It is a subject of much scholarly contention just how accurately these official customs logs reflected the reality of the trade. Were they meticulous records of commerce, or were they elaborate, collaborative lies, written by merchants hoping to obscure their true profits and officials happy to collect undocumented fees? You know the answer all too well. The official tax is just the opening bid in a long and tiresome negotiation. The real business will be done in whispers and nods, well away from the scribe's record book. You pull your camel to a halt at the back of the queue, the sounds and smells of the city's edge washing over you. It is an overwhelming sensory assault, the shouting of vendors, the braying of donkeys, the scent of charcoal fires, roasting meat, and thousands of unwashed bodies. You huddle with two other Sogdian silk merchants, your faces grim. You quickly agree on the valuation you will all declare for your goods, a price low enough to be unbelievable but serving as a starting point. You count out the silver coins you're willing to part with, hiding the rest in a separate pouch. You straighten your dusty robe and compose your face into a mask of weary honesty. You are an actor preparing for the most important role of your journey, the part of the simple, unremarkable merchant who has definitely, absolutely, declared everything he has to the last thread. It is the performance of a lifetime. The ordeal at the gate is over. You are poorer by one roll of indigo silk, a handful of silver coins, and a significant portion of your faith in bureaucratic efficiency, but you are in. You lead Rustam and Soraya through the narrow, chaotic streets of the Rabad, the city's sprawling suburbs. The noise is a physical blow after the relative quiet of the trail. Potters shout, blacksmiths hammer, children scream, and dogs bark, all creating a disorienting symphony of civilization. Your exhaustion is a heavy cloak on your shoulders, and the dull, throbbing drumbeat in your tooth reminds you of your first two priorities, a safe place to store your goods, and a place to lay your head. Both can be found in a single, magnificent institution, the caravanserai. You arrive before one of them, a vast, fortress-like building of mud brick that takes up an entire city block. It has a single, massive wooden gate, the only point of entry and exit, designed as much for defense as for commerce. This is the great architectural innovation of the road, a mainstream historical feature that makes long-distance trade possible. It is a hotel, a warehouse, a marketplace, and a stable, all wrapped in a thick, protective wall. You lead your camels through the gate and into the heart of the beast. The interior is a massive, open-air courtyard, a churning vortex of activity. Hundreds of camels, donkeys, and horses are crammed into pens, their noise and smell a formidable assault on the senses. Merchants from a dozen different lands are shouting, haggling, and unloading cargo. It is chaos, but it is organized chaos. Around the perimeter of this courtyard is a two-story arcade, lined with dozens of small, identical arched doorways. Behind each door is a small room, a cell, which will be your home and office for the next few weeks. Your mundane worry now shifts from survival to selection. You need to find a room that is secure, tolerably clean, and not located directly above the pen of a man who is transporting 50 incontinent goats. It's the ancient world's version of shopping for a hotel room, only your primary criteria are minimal risk of plague and tolerable stench. You approach the gatekeeper, a large, sour-faced man who looks like he was born in the doorway and has never left. As you haggle over the price of a room and a secure, private storeroom for your silk, you wonder who truly owns this place. Historians and economists still debate the ownership models for these vital institutions. Were they state-sponsored public works, profitable private businesses run by wealthy consortiums, or, as was common in many parts of the world you travel through, charitable endowments known as WOC, built by the pious rich to earn favor with God? Judging by the exorbitant fee the gatekeeper is demanding, you're fairly certain this particular establishment is not in it for the spiritual merit. After a brief but spirited negotiation, you are handed a heavy iron key and pointed towards a room on the second floor. It is, as expected, a small, dark, brick-floored cell with a low, arched ceiling. There is a raised platform at one end for your bedroll and absolutely nothing else. No window, no furniture. But it is private, and it has a door that locks. Before you bring in your personal belongings, you perform the vital ritual of debugging, a fringe piece of practical wisdom every traveler knows. From your bag, you pull out a small, tightly bound bundle of dried wormwood. You light it with an ember from a nearby fire and place it in the center of the room. A thick, acrid, bitter smoke quickly fills the small space. The logic is simple. The smoke, which is deeply unpleasant to you, is supposedly 10 times more unpleasant to bedbugs, fleas, lice, and scorpions, driving them from their hiding places in the walls. The room now smells like a wizard's bonfire, but it's a fair price to pay for not being devoured in your sleep. With the room fumigated, you can finally begin the process of settling in. You unload your personal packs, but the precious silk bales go into the separate, high-security storeroom near the front gate. You lead Rustam and Soraya to a trough in the crowded courtyard, watching them drink their fill before paying a stable hand to give them a measure of good quality feed. Only when your animals and your cargo are secure can you finally think of yourself. You limp over to a food stall in the corner of the courtyard, the smell of roasting lamb and onions making your stomach ache with a hunger that has been building for weeks. You trade a small coin for a wooden bowl filled with a greasy, glorious lamb stew, and a piece of soft, fresh, white bread. You sit on a dusty step and take your first bite. It is paradise. The hot, savory stew is a revelation after weeks of dry rations. The soft bread, a miracle after gnawing on hardtack that could double as a building material. The joy is so profound it almost makes you forget the dull ache in your jaw. Almost. You finish the meal, feeling more human than you have in a month. You have a full belly. Your camels are safe. Your silk is secure. And you have a solid roof over your head and a door you can lock. It might be a tiny, smoky, bug-riddled cell, but after weeks on the trail, it feels like a palace. The real work of selling your goods will begin tomorrow. But tonight, you will sleep behind a locked door, a simple luxury that feels like the greatest treasure in the entire city. A few days have passed in the vibrant, noisy cocoon of the caravanserai. You are a new man. The city has a barber with forearms like tree trunks and a mercifully small pair of iron pliers, and the traitorous tooth now rests in the bottom of a rubbish heap. The relief is so profound it has sharpened all your other senses. With the constant, grinding pain gone, your mind is clear, focused, and ready for the final and most important battle of your entire journey. Today, you sell the silk. You have sent word via a broker, a dallal, and a meeting has been arranged with a wealthy local textile merchant. All the miles walked, the storms weathered, the anxieties endured, have all led to this single, quiet moment in your small, smoky room. This is the ultimate mundane worry, the fear of a bad sale. The terror that after all this, your judgment was poor, the market has shifted, and your treasure is worthless. You walk to the secure storeroom near the front gate, the heavy iron key cool in your palm. Inside, the air is still and smells of dust and stored goods. You approach your 4 bales, the silent companions of your long journey. They look just as they did when you first packed them in the pre-dawn darkness months ago. Before you touch them, you perform a small, private ritual, a quirky superstition to steady your nerves. You pull a single, worn silver dram from a hidden pocket in your belt. It's your lucky coin, the first piece of silver you ever earned as a merchant's apprentice. You press its smooth, cool surface against the rough burlap of the lead bale, whispering a silent prayer to the god of fair trade and favorable odds. Back in your room, which you have cleaned and arranged to serve as a showroom, you await the buyer. The use of a professional broker is a mainstream historical fact of this trade. The dallal is a local man who knows everyone, greases the wheels of commerce, and vouches for both the seller and the buyer, taking a small percentage for his troubles. It is his job to prevent outright fraud and to facilitate a smooth negotiation. He arrives first, followed by the buyer, a man named Jasser. Jasser is everything you are not. Where your robes are dusty and travel-worn, his are fine, clean wool. Where your face is weathered by sun and wind, his is pale and placid. He is a man of the city, and he exudes a calm, unnerving confidence. The 3 of you exchange pleasantries, a slow, formal dance of etiquette. Then, silence falls. It is time. You turn to the first bale. With your knife, you carefully snip the ropes, including your own ugly, faithful repair, and peel back the layers of protective wrapping. And then you unroll the first bolt. The silk spills out into the dim light of the oil lamp, a river of shimmering, midnight blue. It whispers as it moves. Even you, who have seen it 100 times, feel a catch in your throat. It is beautiful. For a fleeting moment, you're tempted to call the whole thing off and keep it, perhaps to fashion yourself a truly decadent set of pajamas. But then you remember your family, your debts, and your purpose. Jasser steps forward. He says nothing. He runs the back of his hand over the fabric. He picks up a corner and rubs it between his thumb and forefinger, feeling its weight, its thread count. He is a master of his craft, and his silence is a weapon. Finally, the broker clears his throat. He notes the color is good, but the weave is perhaps a little loose for the tastes of the emir's court. He then names a price. It is insultingly low, barely more than what the silk cost you back in Samarkand. The game has begun. Economic historians continue to debate the nature of price setting in these pre-modern markets. Was there a generally understood market price for a bolt of fine silk, or was every transaction a unique, isolated battle of wills, where the final number was determined by nothing more than the respective skill, patience, and desperation of the two parties involved? You are now living that academic debate. The negotiation is a slow, agonizing process. You counter with a price that is ridiculously high. Jasser scoffs, almost imperceptibly. The broker ferries offers and counter-offers back and forth. It is a form of theater, and every participant knows their lines. You hold your ground. You know the quality of your goods. You patiently point out the consistency of the dye, the strength of the weave. An hour passes. You unroll a second bolt, this one a fiery crimson. The process repeats. The haggling is exhausting, a chess match where every move must be considered. Finally, you reach the end game. A price is offered. It is not the fantasy price you dreamed of on the long, boring afternoons, but it is a good price. A fair price. It is a price that represents a significant profit. You look at the broker. You look at Jasser. You give a single, slow nod. The deal is done. The silver is counted out onto a cloth, its shine more beautiful than any silk. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost makes you dizzy, washes through you. The weight of 1,000 miles and 100 worries, the sore camel, the annoying companion, the officials, the wind, the tooth, the fake amulet, the frayed rope, all of it lifts from your shoulders and vanishes into the smoky air of the small room. You've done it. You have turned a long and dangerous journey into a pile of silver. You have succeeded. And now, as the silver is safely stored away and the buyer has departed, you sit alone on your sleeping mat in the quiet of your room. The sharp edges of the day begin to soften and blur. The cacophony of the caravanserai outside, the shouting, the hammering, the braying of donkeys, starts to fade, melting into a single, distant, indistinct hum, like the sound of a far-off river. All of the worries that have been your constant companions, the little anxieties that have gnawed at you for months, have finally been silenced. They have been paid in full. There is nothing left to do now but rest. There are no more knots to check, no more water to ration, no more officials to placate, no more pains to endure. The long road is at an end, and you are safe behind a solid wall and a locked door. The flickering flame of your oil lamp casts long, gentle shadows that dance on the walls, and the smoky, herbal scent of the room is a strange and comforting perfume. Feel the immense weight of the journey finally lifting from your body, your shoulders relaxing, your jaw unclenched. There is only the feeling of a deep and profound stillness, the quiet satisfaction of a task completed. The journey is over. And it is time, at long last, to sleep.